you ever been to an art museum? I bet you have, since the Metropolitan Museum in New York City reported that 5.68 million people visited them in 2011, and a reported 9.26 million visited the Louvre in 2014. So you've been to an art museum, but have you ever really looked at art? I mean, really looked at it? Or were you just one of those people that the Art Institute Chicago reported spent about 3 minutes in a gallery and didn't even look at the captions on the photos? I bet you were one of those people. And I bet it's because no one ever taught you how to look at a piece of art. A lot of people believe that just because we consume media all the time, we automatically understand how to look at and interpret a piece of art. But that's not necessarily true, given that there's a lot of man-hours and symbolism that goes into these tiny little pictures. I mean, we send kids to school for 12 years to study the likes of Shakespeare, Conrad, Tolstoy, and Fitzgerald, because we know that kids don't always necessarily understand the deeper meaning. But when it comes to art, kids are just left alone to figure it out. Well, what I want to try to do in the next about 11 minutes is to teach all of you how to look at art and find that elusive meaning that people are always debating about. So we're going to start relatively simply, and we're going to ask, what is art? Well, I say we're going to start simply, when in actuality it's a pretty complex question. Get it again? Merriam-Webster's dictionary defines art as something that is created with imagination and skill, and that is beautiful or that expresses important ideas or feelings, and also as a branch of learning. So that sounds pretty simple, doesn't it? And it does until you take into account that Merriam-Webster is not the only place that defines things. An article on the website Mental Floss presents 27 different definitions of art, and not from random people on the street either, but from the likes of the Oxford English Dictionary and people such as Plato, Robert Frost, and Peter Sells, an art historian. Even the famous Russian writer Leo Tolstoy is quoted as saying that in order correctly to define art, it is necessary, first of all, to cease to consider it as a means to pleasure and to consider it as one of the conditions of human life. Viewing it in this way, we cannot fail to observe that art is one of the means of intercourse between man and man. In his book titled, What is Art? So we see here that art is not a simple concept. It isn't simply the object that the artist creates, but is, once again, as Tolstoy puts it, something that causes the receiver to enter into a certain kind of relationship, both with him who produced or is producing the art, and with all those who simultaneously, previously, or subsequently receive the same artistic impression. Art is something more than its physical form. It is what it makes you, the observer, feel while observing it, whether that's what the artist wanted you to feel or not. This uniqueness is also what makes it such a personal thing, and explains why it has so many accepted definitions. But one thing it doesn't quite explain is why you, a mathematician, or an athlete, or a literary scholar, should care about it. So, why look at art? The website artforyourmind.com lists 6 reasons why people should look at art. The first is problem solving. When we're talking about problem solving, we're talking about looking closely at and thinking deeply about all different types of art. Those types can stretch across different time periods, cultures, geographic places, mediums, and of course artists. This viewing of a wide variety of art encourages critical thinking, and by pairing pieces together, it challenges you to find a meaning and compare and contrast them. Personal fulfillment is basically just talking about hobbies. How many older people, or even just like 20-somethings, have you ever heard complain about not having a hobby? This is because there's a wide belief that an active body and mind leads to physical and emotional well-being. And research suggests that as technology becomes more prevalent, we are constantly searching for more emotional fulfillment. Well, analyzing and creating meaning in something that someone else has made is incredibly imaginative and beneficial. Now, corporate success. I know what you're thinking. Is this going to turn into a talk about advertising? No, it is not. There are so many stories being written nowadays about progressive workplaces that are inspiring and empowering their employees and helping them build up their critical thinking skills by allowing them to view art and discuss it. And the website also notes that books such as Daniel Pink's A Whole New Mind and Thomas Friedman's The World is Flat are arguing that imagination and creativity are in fact the key to productivity, which is very important in the workplace. Now, enhancing education, really easy, right? I mean, we've all been to a museum and we hear those students talking about, oh, the undertones, they represent sadness. No. You don't have to train and study art history or art theory to understand that there's an overwhelming amount of research out there that proves the importance of art in education. Even Harvard University's Graduate School of Education has started Project Zero, which is a program to study and improve education in the arts by researching the ways to encourage visual learning. But how can art be a better use of technology? Well, technology is constantly changing, and because of that, it's constantly changing our lives. And as of recently, if you go to any museum website, you can peruse their collection right there from the comfort of your own home. Some even have virtual tours. And I think a lot of parents would probably agree that that's a much better use of their kid's phone than taking selfies. And the last reason is just that it's fun. I like this reason because I don't think people should really have to justify why they want to look at art. It's entertainment just as much as a movie or a book or a song. We don't often go around asking people, hey, why are you seeing so many movies? Or hey, why do you always listen to music? Because we enjoy it. Entertainment is fun, and a lot of the times it's also really enriching to you. Okay, so now I've defined art, and I've convinced you to look at it, but the question still remains, how do you look at art? Well, there's no set way to look at it. If you really want to start looking at art and you have no idea where to begin, there are some things that you can do. The first thing is obviously just look at it. Gauge your own response to it. Why did you choose to look at this particular piece, and why are you still looking at it? How does it make you feel, and what does it remind you of? The next thing you can do is just get the straight up facts about the piece. What's the title of it? Who was the artist? When was the piece made? And when was the artist alive? And what is the piece itself actually made of? Most of the time this information is on the little white card next to the piece. Now, look at the piece again, and I'm going to tell you these 7 ways that you can make your understanding of the painting more in depth. So the first thing you do is look at the composition of the painting. What is it actually of? Is it of several things, one thing? If it's of several, how are they joined? And what on the painting is your eye first actually drawn to? The next thing you do is look for lines. Look at their direction, their thickness, their angle, whether they are straight or curved or jagged, continuous or broken, long, short, overlapping, parallel, fuzzy, crisp. So many things can be considered with lines, including whether or not they're actual lines. Because anything that splits a painting into 2 pieces can be considered a line. But what isn't considered a line? Well, usually if something's not a line, it's a shape. And there are round shapes, triangular shapes, rectangular shapes, all different kinds of shapes. The next thing you want to look for is tones. Not like literary tones, but tones of color. What's highlighted in the artwork, what's clouded over, and is what's highlighted in the painting what your eyes were first drawn to, because most of the time it is, and that's the most important part of the piece. Continuing on with tones, you want to look at just the overall colors. Are they all bright, flashy, in-your-face, neon colors, or are they kind of softer pastel colors? Are they all black and white, or everything's a different color? Are the different lines different colors, and do they change when they overlap? From these colors, you then discern patterns, and it's really just good to see if there's a pattern or not, because a lot of times there isn't. And finally, textures. You want to look at not only the texture in the painting, like the texture of the rocks or the dog's fur, but of the paint itself on the canvas. You want to look at, are there like tons of tiny little smooth strokes where you can't even really tell that there was a paintbrush, or is it just jagged and sticking off the canvas? These details about the piece allow you to answer all kinds of questions about it, from just the type of art it is, like a portrait or a landscape or a sculpture, to how the artist made it, whether they were really slow and meticulous hiding their brushstrokes, or whether they were just big and excited and splashed paint everywhere, to how symbolic the piece could be and what it's actually about. Okay, so those are the basics, what to look at, why to look at it, but I think one question still remains. And that question is, how long do you look at art? Now, I could cite a Boston Globe article telling you to stare at one piece for 3 hours, or I could cite an article from The Guardian saying that people only looked at the Mona Lisa, yes, that Mona Lisa, for 15 seconds. But in fact, there's a ton of overwhelming research that argues any time frame from 3 seconds to 6 decades. There are several articles on Huffington Post detailing interviews with people that went back and stared at the same painting every day for 30 years. But that's not really reasonable to ask of the average working person, is it? No. And frankly, no matter how much research you read, no matter how much you think about how long you're gonna spend looking at art, the amount of time you spend is as personal as the meaning of the piece itself. And art is really the only thing like that. A book takes a certain amount of time to read, a movie a certain amount of time to watch, but with art, you determine how long you spend on it. So why even give it the time of day? Well, because everybody has an opinion about art. No matter who you are, no matter what you think, whether you love it or you hate it or you think it's pointless, you have an opinion. And people love to say that you can't call opinions wrong. What I'm saying is that if you take a little time and you really look at the painting and you note those 7 things, then people are a little bit less likely to question your opinion. Because when you take that time, when you really think, people believe it more, because you have facts, you have thoughts that are more in-depth, and frankly, you might even surprise yourself. Thank you for listening. Go look at art.